The next guest is joining us directly from London. In streaming, it's Paul Willoughby. He's a co-founder and an executive creative director of Human After All, a B Corp, and a London-based design studio powered by reason and empathy. Paul is also a creative director of Weapons of Reason, a publishing project that aims to help readers to understand complex issues like climate change, inequality, and conflict. He has curated The Guardian's masterclass in illustration, while his design clients have included BAFTA, HBO, Greenpeace, and the United Nations. So welcome, Paul. Can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly well. Can you hear me?
Yes. You are now in presence as well, so
Great.
I'm passing the turn. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. So hello from cold, rainy London. Lovely, it's a pleasure to join you all today. I'm going to try and share my screen now, and hopefully we can get the show on the road. I've just activated that. Can you see a slide that says Graphic Days and Human After All? Waiting for a signal from the team. If someone could send me a message, that would be very useful. Okay. All looks to be good.
Okay. Yes, Paul, we can see you. Thank you. If you can see the slide on your screen, then it means that we also see it here in the room.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully this will all run super smooth from here on in. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm from a creative design agency in London called Human After All. We're a team of around 26 creative, strategic thinkers, designers, digital designers, and producers, and account handlers. These are some of our humans right here. We rebranded recently, and just like with our clients, we had to dig deep into what kind of values drive us as an agency, and see that through to fruition in our visual identity. And the chord we struck upon was that we really believe in bringing more reason and empathy to the world. This is also related to being a B Corp, because we believe that good business balances profit with people, planet, and purpose. So you'll see throughout the rest of the talk how these values really are imbued into the work that we do. Some of our other values are listed here. So why reason? It's a lot to do with us making weapons of reason, which you'll also hear about, but it's also to do with the depth of thinking required for the kinds of projects that we do, and being confident in that thinking and revealing it to our clients. And when we speak about empathy, that's all about putting ourselves in other people's shoes and seeing how those decisions that we make for those people affect both them and the world around them. And when it comes to simplicity, it helps to be incredibly reductive in our thinking, make communications that travel incredibly fast and communicate very clearly, tends to lead to success. And then also ethics, again, related to the B Corp, we try and make sure we're good humans in what we do. That relates to the kind of clients we work with and the kind of responsibility we feel in the work that we do. So I'm going to kick off with Weapons of Reason, which is our passion project in the studio, which helps us understand and articulate the global challenges shaping our world. So it's meant to be an 8-issue project. We're currently making issue 8 right now. So much like what Sylvia was talking about, we cover the interconnectedness of the issues shaping the world today. And this is a visual that really speaks to that. So climate change has a lot to do with population, which has a lot to do with the balance of power, and technology seeps into all kinds of different issues. So this visual aims to just really land that idea that all these mega issues which face the world are completely interrelated, and we need to see them as a full ecosystem. Where our name came from is quite an interesting story. So we read a book by Al Gore, which is called The Future, and in that we found this amazing quote by Marcus Aurelius, and Stoic philosopher, which is, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which arm you today against the present." So it really lands the idea of reason being an unshakable thing, something which we can totally rely upon, and look at scientific inquiry and deep thinking to really get to the bottom of big issues. And that really helps when grappling with this kind of idea. So this came from Carl Jung, and it's really people don't have ideas, but ideas have people. And you can look at this in the same way that maybe the virus which is surrounding us right now behaves, and that is, its ideas are looking for a host. They're looking to be passed on and to be held as a truth by someone, and that's really how they survive and they live and they make their way forward. So as an individual, we are a collection of millions of ideas which we picked up over our lifetime, and the further you track those ideas back, the more opaque they become, and the more you should really question where they came from, their validity, and the kind of truth which they're based on. Especially when social media and sponsored media in general is implanting ideas into our head on a day-to-day basis. So one thing which can help around this issue is reasoning from first principles, and this is a concept that I came across whilst watching an interview with Elon Musk. So this is a very long quote, which I'm going to read out, but basically the idea is boiling things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. Through most of our life, we reason by analogy, which is essentially means copying what other people do with slight variations. So what Elon is getting at there is really that reason is the ladder in which we can navigate big issues. Like, we can walk up the ladder and see what's there. We can walk down the ladder and see what's there. And the more you reason down to first principles, the more you know the kind of ideas that you're mining and what the whole offering sits upon, the firm foundations. But as soon as you introduce fake news and untrustworthy sources, that ladder really shatters, it comes apart, and we actually don't have any firm footing anymore. We can draw parallels in design a little here by sort of saying that, great design really designs from first principles. Obviously, the speaker on the left is a design based upon a design based upon a design, and so forth. And the speaker on the right is where people went back to the drawing board and thought, okay, what is it that humans love about music? What do they love about speakers? Let's make a product that really speaks to that. Another tool that we use is to basically ask why many, many times. And that really helps us mine down for those fundamental truths that influence a project. Because really we're looking for that kernel of the idea, that truth that everything rests upon. So the more you ask why, the more you can peel away the layers and actually reveal the fruits that lie within. Another parallel with design is locked up in this visual. So I think in Tokyo they had such a problem with sonic booms coming from bullet trains flying through tunnels that they were looking for another design solution. And instead of building design upon design and just keep iterating from there, they went back to nature. And they found that the kingfisher's bill is the perfect instrument in nature to pierce water, which is very much like the forces of a train piercing a tunnel. Also, I was fortunate to meet the McLaren designer a few years ago, and he talked about how he based McLarens on sailfish here, which are some of the fastest fish in the ocean. So you can see how that design language has been copied across and leads to, you know, high speeds, better looks, and better functionality. Also with Mercedes, copying the box fish leads to, you know, ultimate room within the car. And who can deny that Justin Timberlake has benefited from his hair looking like super noodles? So another thing we really hold dear is this idea that we should do everything for a reason. So as designers, sometimes it's tempting to say, you know, I did this because I like it, or, you know, this seems to be the right thing to do. It's really much more beneficial to actually reveal why you did something, because designing is thinking made visual, which is a great quote here from Saul Bass. And, you know, if your thinking is muddled, then your design will become absolutely muddled. So this is a capture of how the magazine looks inside and the kind of qualities that we like to bring to the fore. So there's a lot of data in there. We treat that incredibly simply, bringing it down to just a few flat colors and drawing attention to the most pertinent data within the story. We keep the colors to a minimum where possible to clearly communicate with clarity. We love icons because they tell a story very quickly, especially when it comes to graphic data points like this on the left. We also use the language of illustration, so I'll go into a lot more detail as we move through this section. One thing we truly believe is that creating constraints equals more creativity in our work. And here you will see a list of all of the rules we apply to Weapons of Reason as a project. And that includes, you know, slimming down the kinds of decisions you have to make across the board. So not having every visual representation within design used. It's very much more of a slim, lean approach. So no gradients, no textures, no bitmap imagery, tints or pure color. These really all help us create a much more focused product and memorable brand. Another thing we created was the voice of reason. So this is our font and the way we tell the story throughout the whole of the magazine. When we created the font, we thought about, so who would this sound like? If it, you know, if this is the voice of reason, who would it be and who would it sound like? Can we put a character to it? And we figured out that it might be David Attenborough. That's the kind of characteristics we were going for. Like, basically, you know, someone who lands these challenging ideas quite softly in a way, which makes them more disarming, you know, makes them more approachable as a subject. We also designed the typeface using the golden section because that creates a very attractive framework for letter forms. And it's also like an underlying structure, which on first pass you don't really know is there, but on examination, you can see that the letter forms have some type of underlying meaning to them. Our color system comprises of these shades and tones. So when we commission illustrators, we basically say to them, like, you have the run of this whole palette and you can use anything here, but don't stray beyond it, because it's quite empowering for an illustrator to know that they can just choose one or two colors and they don't have to sit there thinking of, you know, a brand new palette every single time. It makes our work process a hell of a lot easier and the brand more powerful. It's a lot like what Dr. Seuss did in Green Eggs and Ham. So he basically wrote this whole book using 50-word vocabulary, which was really an act of genius and has been a huge influence on us. And this really helps when we're drawing attention to world issues, such as climate change. This reductive palette really helps us draw attention to the things that really resonate the most. We also love, excuse me, dry throat. We also love storytelling. So whilst reading a few storytelling books, I came across this idea of the gleaming detail. So the gleaming detail comes from the storytelling tradition and is a lot to do with a very ordinary, everyday object being a transformational force within a story. You'll see this in all kinds of, popular content, TV, films, etc. But, it's most prevalent within the traditional storytelling medium. So, something as simple as a match can become a great story for telling, what is happening with climate change, with the world there sitting there in flames. Also, the human impact on the Arctic. People growing up amongst trash in Manila. And this was an incredibly hard one to illustrate. This is people committing suicide in the forest that sit outside of Tokyo. Quite a sensitive subject, but an everyday object that people can grasp hold of can help us tell that story in an incredibly sensitive way. And this is how people lose chapters of their life from their mind because of Alzheimer's. And Syria going up in flames due to ISIS. And we also use humor. So humor does a great job of, again, disarming people and making complicated subjects seem very approachable. And this is an image which is, I think it's to do with older people taking drugs to have sex, basically. Again, quite a hard one to illustrate. But when you use humor in this way, it really lightens up the whole mood and makes it a real celebration of, sex as we get older. And this is an elderly entrepreneur. And basically old people rioting, beating up millennials. There was a lot of news around this in China. Again, using humor to really sort of unlock the potential of this piece and show people what it's all about. We also love patterns, so we place these at the front and end papers of the magazine. And what we try and do here is pick out the real defining forces within an issue. So this was Rich and the Poor for populations. This is the dance of death, your doctor, and you as you age within the aging issue, all tessellating, telling the story. And this is the angels and demons of power within our power issue. So moving on to some of the projects that we create at Human After All. First one being a project called International Alert. So this was a big challenge to reposition a think tank as an essential peace-building organization. The big challenge here was the fact that they really disliked their identity so much because it was incredibly square. So the influence that had on the work that we do was paramount, and you'll see a lot of circles here in reflection from that. So, well, the way we usually handle things is to run a collaborative workshop right at the beginning of the process, which really establishes what all of the key stakeholders think and celebrate about their current brand, what's going right, what's going wrong, and their opinions for the future, and synthesize all of that into the key strategy that drives the creative. They just appointed a new CEO, which you'll see on the far right here, Harriet Lamb, and she came from fair trade, which has been an incredibly successful brand over the years. And she was instrumental in influencing this project, and she knew that she wanted some sort of gesture, some sort of human behavior that could be reflected throughout the visual work, but also in real life. So you'll see this this handshake gesture, which came about after the project, after we designed the logo. As a bunch of creative humans, we love to start projects on paper, exploring things quickly, iteratively. You can go so far on paper so quickly, and keeping away from the digital realm until much later on in the project. I thought I'd give you guys a glimpse behind the beginnings of the strategy in the creative for this project, where we showed 3 different creative routes to the client, all of them based on the core strategy, but pulling apart the different values and personality traits in slightly different ways. So these were the 3 creative routes that we presented to the International Alert Board. We eventually settled on the one you saw on the right there. And this is some of the key factors driving that, where the ideas from, like showing our stem of reasoning. So peace building is all about creating a space for people to actually build peace together. So this reminded me a lot of what I'd seen of Oliver Ellison's work in the Tate, which you'll see up in the left-hand side there. It's a massive globe filling the turbine hall. Almost had like an extremely gravitational pull. It's also a people-powered organization, so we needed to show, you know, some sort of mark making, some sort of realness to the imagery, where people have made this imagery and people are connecting together. So yeah, it's a real place to convene and to create peace as a group. So this is the tagline that we settled on: peace is within our power. Again, the visual just on the right there really illustrates this idea of building a space for peace, a warm, welcoming zone. We also created a graphic language which, within the logo, the space you see would accept newer and newer icons. It could tell multiple different stories and grow with the brand, because we really believe that brands should be given to organizations, and they should be able to then take that on board and customize it to use in many different ways across the future and not be so rigid. Another example of the graphic language that we developed, an illustration, the photography. The organization benefits from many great photographers and donors out in the world capturing this beautiful stuff. So we advised giving it a warm grading, which kept it related to the yellow that we're using mainly in the brand. Moving into digital, how that looks on the website. The use of white spaces here is also a great promoter of peace. You know, it's a resting state. And this is an email newsletter. So again, white space, it's incredibly calming. It has urgent issues, but they want to create everyday peace with this work and really sort of affect people in that way. We help them figure out their theory of change and also move all of the work into print. This is their 30th anniversary report. So another thing that's very important to us is the fact that this work resonates out in the world. So we were very interested to see, you know, how would teams receive the work, you know, across all of the global offices for International Alert, and how would it be celebrated? And we were pleased to see this image in the bottom left there, which is, I think, a team basically creating a whole mural out of our new work, which we never anticipated. So a really good response globally. So on to our next case study. I thought I'd show you guys a project we did for Greenpeace called People versus Oil. So, I mean, you don't always see this, and this is the whole reason for the brand, but Greenpeace are incredibly active across the globe within many different oil-based activations and campaigns aimed at basically avoiding the environmental disasters which you see on the left here. And in the project, you know, we had to look at Greenpeace as an activist organization, as well as, you know, a donated to organization. They do work in so many different fields, but, you know, this was a global campaign to really mobilize teams in being incredible activists within many different contexts. So that saw us look at the history of activism posters. Obviously on the left here you see classic example, as well as how it is taken on different characteristics, but all still incredibly similar in modern times with Extinction Rebellion. The kit that we came up with was derived from Google Fonts, actually, and you'll see a lot of that in our work. We choose Google Fonts because they are accessible to everyone globally. They usually have a lot of different translations, so people can use them in different languages. And this makes them tools which more and more people can use, which unlocks the work and helps it to be used in a much wider context. We mixed different mark making here to you know, blend in that feeling of a people-powered organization with a very powerful activist organization, and that accounts for the mix here between the two different blending fonts. We also paired it with black and white photography to simplify the effort and to draw people's attention to the characters really at the heart of the tale. We built the logo, People versus Oil, much like with internazionale, to be a flexible asset which could be used again and again for many, many different activations. So People versus Oil is just the umbrella name for this whole package of activity, whereas year on year they'll be creating more and more and more activations. So we made the whole thing completely elastic and changeable, so it could just evolve over time. This is the brand hub we created. We always try and provide clients with really quick, easy access to all of the different brand assets. So all they need to do is navigate onto this site, which is still very much live and kicking, and grab the assets straight from there and get designing. We also created the campaign hub, which you'll see in the center there, a place for people to sign up and know more, to jump on board. Also, like in empowering teams, it's great to give them really easy instructions how to spin up different social media assets, for instance, very quickly. Here's a quick sequence of images that shows how we constructed the visual language. So all starts with a black and white photo, which again has connotations of oil, but you know, not too overtly. We layer that with the colorful block shaping, which leaves a window to what's happening underneath, and then layers with the people-powered text and the activism font. Some more digital activations just showing how the black and white can be leveraged, as well as the much more powerful color, and how the oscillation between those is quite powerful. When it comes to socials, you know, the imagery needed to cut through very much on socials, especially within a avatar context, and work across different campaigns for years to come. Again, we didn't know exactly what would happen with this work as it headed out into the wild, and different teams were using it. So it was beautiful to see people several leagues under the sea, holding up a banner with our visual identity on it. Also scaling a oil rig and plenty of activity in the different regions of the world, this one in Australia. So on to another Greenpeace project. This one, a completely different feel to this one, because this was Greenpeace creating a new brand and pretty much staying in the background. You know, like this is one where Greenpeace are sponsoring it. You know, it's by Greenpeace, but it's not, Greenpeace aren't focused. You know, this is a new way of thinking for Greenpeace in a way. And I'm sure they're doing a lot of different projects in a similar context. The project was for a financial services platform, an ethical one, which aims to stop climate change and promote green energy sources. So yes, giving people the power to stop climate change, another people-powered project. And the aim here in our approach to the visuals was to really show, here are the people behind the story, and here is what the story is affecting, which you see at the bottom there, the nature shots. So the mission of the whole project is to accelerate renewable energy transition and to democratize a sector which has traditionally been reserved for, I don't know, when you look at investors, they generally invest in quite opaque sources. So sometimes you'll get investors which, you know, for instance, in your pension, maybe your pension is inadvertently funding landmines and armaments and you don't know about it. And that's really the problem with the industry, is it's so opaque. There's very little transparency. So this project is really riding that wave of transparent investing and giving people a sense of exactly where their money is going. So in contrast to the other projects you've seen, this is a much cleaner logo. This is to invest, to appeal to investors. Slightly different audience, different feel, but also to the general public who could be encouraged to be investors. So the approach to photography really draws attention to the fact that, you know, this is a life-changing brand that will really affect things. So into the digital realm. So this is a prototype of the website, the portal where you will be able to go in and invest in renewable energies such as wind, solar, in different projects where you'll actually see the characters at the heart of the project and see who you're investing in and what projects are driven by. Another poster showing that symbiosis between the people at the heart of the matter and, you know, the kind of environments that you will affect with your investment. And I thought I'd close with a personal project that we created at Human After All. Every now and again, we run a hackathon, which involves all of our staff brainstorming on a particular issue and coming up with work which will, you know, have a life, hopefully helping organizations or people who are within a particular context. This context being the climate strike of last year. So all of these images will look very pre-COVID to everyone because there's crowds standing together. So our audience. So when it comes to protest graphics, really the problem is that, you know, it becomes an incredible mishmash of visual stimulus. You know, it's like everyone makes their own sign, which makes for a lot of character in those individual communications, but not that much unity. And what we've seen with the likes of Extinction Rebellion and co is a more branded approach to protest and activism, where it's extremely noticeable which organization these things come from. So the opportunity here is to arm the world with powerful, easy to use creative assets that make global climate change feel real. This is us kicking off the project, having a brainstorm session, and just introducing, landing the fact that, you know, a branded approach can be an incredibly powerful tool when, you know, these kinds of images are propagated throughout media, and just seeing that same logo again and again and again, and a very, very clear message. So we set about brainstorming the issues and creating, you know, both icons and messages based on the stories. This is us workshopping and placing all of those up on the wall, and, you know, mapping them all out, clustering, seeing which one's related to others, what's successful and not so successful. We then voted on these with the purple stickers that you see here. So this one attracted a lot of votes and got voted through, related to the rise in water levels, obviously. This one related to global warming and the kind of desertification which will happen if we don't put a stop to things. And that resulted in these more designed vectorized graphics, which you see here. We were actually told that this one looks like a penis, and they were quite right, to be honest. The magic behind this project was actually using Google Slides, the humble Google Slides, which is an incredible design tool, actually. And I don't think people are using it quite for this purpose, which I'll show you here, widespread. So we're hoping to share more of these types of projects as we go along. So what you see here is our protest pack, which we put out on social media. We shared with a few other media outlets to share. And this was basically a Google Slides document where people could see all of the instructions, a whole bunch of slogans that the team had come up with, and also encouraging people to come up with their own slogans. But then also the icon set, which were ready to be copied and pasted over the rest of the doc. So what you see here is like a sped up animation of us putting together a few designs within Google Slides, basically showing that it's very much like a professional design tool. Lots of access to amazing fonts, and you can manipulate graphics in much the same way as you could in something like Adobe InDesign. And this is how it looked out in the wild. So this is the team climate striking, and just showing how we mixed in with the different types of communications going on around us. Marching around Westminster. So we're incredibly proud to say that through sharing it online, the team actually saw a whole bunch of protesters actually using the kit out in the wild. They'd made their own designs and completely replaced our slogans, which was all along the intended purpose, really, for people to use this as a democratized design tool. And it was great to see. So yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully I can see everyone in a second.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for your talk. I actually have a couple of questions, and then we wanted to make a short pause of like 10 minutes after this. So my first question is, you are collaborating a lot with very strong politically oriented organizations. So what do you think are the benefits and the risks of a design studio in this case?
I'm getting some feedback, so I'm just going to put my headphones like this. So that's a really good question. And the first thing I'll say is,
Paul, can you hear
me? When we work with Greenpeace, they...
Paul, can you hear me?
A design studio has to...
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, the microphone is, I think it's creating interferences with your sweatshirt. Yeah, okay, great.
Oh, sorry.
That is better, thank you.
it's a hazard of these things. Okay, yeah. So we obviously have a relationship with Greenpeace. We've worked with those guys a hell of a lot. And we don't have to do pro bono work for them because they do have budgets for these types of things. But, you know, we work with them because they dovetail nicely with our worldview and, you know, our values as an organization. So to keep the design studio running, we can't always do this type of work with the lower budgets. We do tend to oscillate between work for bigger tech clients, which are some of the most important organizations in the world today. And through doing that, we pick up a lot of learnings, a lot of excellence within design that we can then bring through to the work that we do with NGOs, charities, not-for-profit organizations. The risk is that people will see some of the work which feels very activist, especially some of the tech clients and maybe more somber clients that we work with, or people that don't want super expressive work, and that may turn them away from the studio. But we don't mind that at all, because we are really trying to shape the kind of work that we're doing in the future, and the kind of work that we put on our website really puts out a very strong signal of, you know, this is what to expect if you work here, and this is the future that we're trying to create for ourselves as well. So it's important to be, you know, somewhat the masters of your own destiny, even though it's very hard to guess what kind of job's coming in through the door next.
Yes, actually, my next question is connected to what you've just said. And when you started working, when you just opened Human After All, and working for advertising and brand, for this type of advertising and brand for social-oriented and NGOs, was your priority as a studio, or was it something that just developed naturally?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one as well, because I think in our 20s we were driven a lot by you know, what's cool in graphic design. You know, like we were the same as any other young design studio. We wanted to work for Nike, we wanted to work for huge media brands. You know, we wanted fame and fortune in some way or another. But as we transitioned to Human After All, which happened around 7 years ago, we'd completely matured as a team, and we were really starting to think about how our work affects the world at large. You know, is it purposeful? Is it useful? You know, is it doing good or is it doing bad? You know, is it beautiful thing for beautiful thing's sake, or does it have genuine utility? So the magic combination for us is absolute genuine utility, powerful communications that really turn the dial for organizations such as you've seen today, International Alert, Greenpeace, and also we recently finished a project for the climate group.
Yes, I think it's a great value, and you are definitely lucky to be able to make this kind of projects and make profit for sure. So my last question will be, for example, in the talk that Sylvia held previously, she said that her research and her projects are mostly related to the territory and the local surroundings, while you've mostly talked about the multinational campaigns for the organizations that are present almost in every country in the world. So what is the most difficult aspect of making this type of campaigns, let's say so?
Yeah, it's really like having to walk away from campaigns is quite hard, because we try and create partnerships which are ongoing with clients, where, you know, we're on hand to help them spin up, you know, ongoing campaigns and activations and evolve the brand in a direction, you know, which seems to be fitting to that regional scenario. But that's not always possible because of, you know, budget constraints and these organizations always having quite, you know, really talented designers in the house ready to pick up the toolkit and move it forward. So Yeah, the hardest thing is when you see your work somewhat taking some twists and turns which weren't anticipated, but I think with age I'm really starting to embrace that, because we're starting to bake that into our projects, and I think I touched upon that here and there. You know, we want our graphic identity toolkits to be really flexible and to evolve with the brand, and maybe it looks completely different in 5 years' time. You know, maybe the only thing that remains is the logo, and they're using all of the rest of the toolkit, like icons, some colors, or a graphic system differently. So yeah, I think I'm just embracing of that, you know, and we're here for the long term for clients, and if they want to oscillate, come back to us and, you know, refocus, which they've done on several occasions, really happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and we will have a short break, 10 minutes, and then we will be back with Dana Abdullah. Thank you.
Lovely. Cheers. Cheers, everyone. Have a lovely day.